Hello and welcome to another unit by unit video here on SkaredCast. We continue to look at the Drukhari and at the next troop choice of the Drukhari book, the Wyches of the Arenas. Let's dive right in, acrobatically. Hello and welcome to the next unit by unit video. We're continuing to look at the new Drukhari Codex, and the next troop choice that we're looking at are the iconic troops of the witch cults, the Wyches. So, as always, this video is in a two-part series. First will be us talking a little bit about the lore behind the Wyches, give us a better understanding of who they are in-game, and then we'll look at their statistics, basic weapon options, and a few basic loadouts. If you'd like to know more, check the links down below, and a huge shout out to all the Patreons who make this possible. Congratulations to the winner of this month's giveaway, winning a new starter, Get Started Drukhari box set. So, let's begin with the Wyches. And I'm Skari, your grateful host, the fancy Archon, wearing a tie and everything. The Wyches. The witch cults of Comra are second in prestige only to the cabals that sponsor them. Although most of the Hecatarii, as the Wyches call themselves, excel at physical combat, some are female, and most cult or few cults actively discriminate by sex, so they can be male and female. Any Drukhari possessed of enough skill and agility may be trained for arena combat. Close-range kills are invigorating for the Drukhari, for the pain that comes at the point of the blade provides a feast of energy to sustain their withered souls. Witches are typically bestowed knives of a weight and shape unique to their cult. The subtle specificity of curvature and resonance serving as a type of signature. Known in the arenas as Hecatarii blades, each is a symbol of the bearer's bond to their cult, and each witch is capable of slaughtering great swathes of enemies armed only with the most pure of weapons. Though witches are driven to achieve perfection in combat, it is rare that a given witch will adhere to a single style of fighting for more than a decade or two before adopting a new method of murder. Despite their penchant for close quarters executions, most witches carry splinter pistols and plasma grenades with them when they embark upon a real space raid. In this way, they are able to quickly cut through the rank-and-file troops and get placed before closing ground with the more desirable opponents. So they use grenades and pistols to clear the chaff to get to the tough targets that they'd like to get to. Witches use a variety of distilled combat drugs that galvanize them to ever greater heights of ballistic dexterity. I love it. Even when an enemy squad attempts to run from the carnage being meted out by the witches, they will often find themselves blocked off at every turn and unable to escape their own slaughter. Each squad of witches is headed by a Hecatrix, who in turn reports to the witch cult's succubi. Rivalry between these Hecatrixes is fierce, as each strives to outshine their peers with ever more inventive acts of murder. On occasion, several Hecatrixes will gather together into a single malevolent clique, calling themselves blood brides. They anoint themselves with the blood of the foe in a dark testament of their prowess. So witches are the arena gladiators. They perform spectacles for the masses of the Dark City, and they rarely embark on a real space raid without the support or patronage of a cabal or cult. However, sometimes they do go on real space raids by themselves, and they sell tickets, and those tickets go to rich, wealthy Cabalites or denizens of the Dark City that want to watch the carnage. So they get on these pleasure cruise barges, and they essentially float behind all the action, watching all the witches go to town on the enemy. So there's a bit of lore for you. Let's jump right in to the witch unit. And it is one of the 3 choices for troops that the Drukhari have in their book. It's the only troop choice available to the witch cults. So witches are power level 2 for 1 Hecatrix and 4 witches. That's a minimum of 5. They are 8 points each. Nothing crazy. So they have a movement of 8. They're 1 inch faster than a Cabalite warrior. They have weapon skill, ballistic skill of 3, toughness, strength 3, 1 wound, 2 attacks each, leadership 7, and 6+ save. Now, the Hecatrix has an extra attack and an extra leadership, making her pretty standard for a unit option upgrade. Now, you can include up to 5 additional witches, or up to 10 additional witches, or up to 15 additional witches. So the unit can be 5, up to 10, up to 15. The maximum unit size you can run are 20 witches. That makes a veritable horde of nasty close combat operatives in a horde per such. And based on what obsession you run, can be quite handy. Each model is armed with a splinter pistol, a Hekatari blade, and plasma grenades, which is pretty cool. Now, plasma grenades are pretty handy because they can also be used against tanks in a pinch to get some mortal wounds off with the use of a stratagem, which is pretty cool. So let's look at some war gear options. Now, just so you know, the Hekatari blade adds an additional close combat attack, and it's just a regular strength weapon, which means that each witch standing still has 3 attacks at hitting on 3s at strength 3. Pretty standard, pretty good for an 8-point model. Including the combat drugs, this can be kind of handy. So what war gear options do the witches have? The Hecatrix may take a Phantasm Grenade Launcher. As the Cabalite Warriors, a Phantasm Grenade Launcher is an 18-inch range assault D3 shot weapon that is only strength 1, so it won't really hurt anything or kill anything. But if it hits, your enemy suffers a -1 leadership modifier. That can be really handy later in the game, or to force morale checks. Or it can be used with a stratagem called a Torment Grenade, which can cause mortal wounds. You roll 3 dice, and if you roll over your opponent's leadership after firing a Phantasm Grenade Launcher, they take D3 mortal wounds. That can work against tanks as well. So even a small unit of witches can be quite handy with a Plasma Grenade and a Phantasm Grenade Launcher at taking out some tough targets. The Hecatrix may replace their Splinter Pistol with a Blast Pistol. Blast Pistol, great little nasty choice, very short range, essentially strength 8, -4 AP, D6 damage that can be shot against units you're in close combat with. So that can be really handy as well. Very powerful short-range pistol. The Hecatrix may replace their Hekatari blade with a power sword or an agonizer. Now, a power sword is -3 AP strength abuser. An agonizer is a poison weapon that wounds on a 4+ with a -2 AP. So if you need her to go against some tough targets, an agonizer is quite handy. And a power sword, it's okay. Very good if you're running the Cursed Blade obsession, because they become strength 4, which with drugs becomes strength 5. So that can be handy if using different obsessions. One witch may replace their Splinter Pistol and Hekatari Blade with one item from the Witch Cult weapon list. If the unit is 10 or more models, up to 2 further witches can also do this, which means a unit of 10 can have 3 witch weapons, and a unit of 5 to 9 can have 1 witch weapon, and 20 can have 3 witch weapons. Now, witch weapons are quite handy, and depending on what you want your witch cult unit to do, they have a variety of different choices. The Shardnet and Impaler is 5 points. Each of the other ones, the Gauntlets and the Razor Flails, are 4 points apiece. So not too bad. And they all do some pretty cool stuff. The Shardnet and Impaler gives damage to attacks, so it's 2 damage attacks, gives an extra attack as well, and has a shard net. Now the net is where it gets handy, and it stacks well with the abilities, namely the no escape rule, where they can tie infantry units in combat. So I'll get to that in a second, but it's probably going to be a very popular choice for your witches to have at least one shard net and Impaler in the unit itself. The second one is the Hydra Gauntlet. The Hydra Gauntlet is a -1 AP weapon that re-rolls wounds and gives the witch carrying them an additional attack, which is not bad, meaning she'll have 3 attacks, re-rolling wounds, and -1 AP. Pretty straightforward. I like the re-roll to wounds with this weapon, and it's probably my favorite choice based on how I play witches. And the last one is the Razor Flail. Razor Flails give D3 additional attacks and re-roll hits. I believe. I'll just check that really quickly. Razor Flails. No, they're just melee user. Oh, Razor Flails. There we go. D3 attacks and reroll fail hit rolls. So I was right, at -1 AP. So the witch can have has 2 attacks plus D3. Could be up to 5 attacks per witch, rerolling misses. Really handy if you don't have a succubus nearby to help them reroll 1s in combat. So, situational. I much prefer rerolling wounds to get more wounds in, since you usually support them with a succubus. But you let me know, what out of the 3, which do you prefer? The Shardnet and Impaler, the Razor Flail, or the Hydra Gauntlets? So those are basic options. It doesn't seem like a lot. They're not really a toolkit style unit like the Cab-Light Warriors, or later we'll see like the Racks. They're not as tough. So where do the witches come in handy? Really, it's with their special rules. So they have a few abilities. Number 1 is Power from Pain. Standard Drukhari special rule. They get a 6+ Feel No Pain. They get reroll charges and advanced rolls starting turn 2. Turn 3, they get +1 to hit. Turn 4, they become fearless. Turn 5, all enemy units within 6, -1 leadership, and they're cumulative throughout the entire game. So they can be fearless, they hit on 2s with lots of attacks, so they can stack up quite nicely as the game goes on. They also have a cool ability called Combat Drugs, kind of like the Succubus. Combat Drugs are 6 different choices. You get to choose or roll on a chart of 6 different things that'll add something to their statistics. An attack, +1 attack, +2 leadership, +1 weapon skill, +2 inches to their movement, +1 strength, and +1 toughness. And you can really cater your witch units to your specific opponents based on those combat drugs, which is pretty cool. So having strength 4 witches, or an extra attack on them, or movement 10 instead of movement 8, really depends on what you'd like to squeeze out of them. If in a big blob, you might want to do the +2 leadership so they don't run away as easily, or even the +1 to hit if you think they're going to get it, or the +1 weapon skill, making the weapon skill 2, if they're going to get stuck in really, really quickly starting on turn 2, so you don't have to start on turn 1, so you don't have to wait till turn 3 in order to get the +1 to hit. They also have a cool rule called Dodge. They have a 6+ invulnerable save, just standard. This is a big departure from before, where the dodge only worked in combat. It's pretty cool. They can dodge bullets, which is really fun. And it increases to a 4+ invulnerable save in combat. Let that sink in for a bit. 4+ invulnerable save is one of the best invulnerable saves any army can get, and in combat it's very hard to dislodge witches with their 4+ invulnerable save, making them very sturdy. Vulnerable to volume of attacks, but very good against elite combat troops that have few high strength attacks. They also have a rule called No Escape. This is the secret sauce for witches. Roll off if an infantry unit within 1 inch of any enemy models with this ability wishes to fall back. The air unit can only fall back if the player controlling it wins the roll off. So, you charge into a unit of Marines, they want to fall back so they can shoot your Wyches. You and your opponent have to roll off, and your opponent can only fall back if they win the roll off. Very cool, which means Wyches can tie down units of infantry. Now, this can be clutch in a game where your opponent has a lot of shooting and screening units, and you need to use the screen to stop him from shooting you. So you could run in a unit of Wyches, and then run in, say, your tanks and flyers and a whole bunch of stuff into the same screen, hopefully not kill it. And then when he tries to fall back, your Wyches hold him in place, so he can no longer shoot all the things you charged in, and the next turn, using fly and cruel deception stratagem, you can fall back and shoot and things like that, and he's essentially wasted a whole turn of shooting. It can be very, very handy, so use that effectively. Now, this is where the Shardnet and Impaler comes into play. If you have a Shardnet and Impaler within 3 inches of a unit that's trying to roll off to fall back, your opponent may only roll a d3 versus your d6, making it almost guaranteed that you will hold your enemy up in combat. And this is very strong. Now, key to note, it is only against infantry, and there are a lot of things in the game that aren't infantry. They're beasts or swarms or vehicles, or they don't have the infantry keyword. So make sure that if you run your Wyches into somewhere, that they have an infantry keyword so you can hold them in place and prevent them from falling back. Now we go on to keywords. Eldari, Drukhari, and Witch Cult. Right, so you've got the 3 different obsessions that you can pick from, and they are infantry and Wyches. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video talking about the Drukhari Wyches. Let me know what you think down below. Share the video with your friends and any new Archons and Succubi that are trying to learn the game. After all, this is Skari, your grateful host, signing off until next time. If you'd like to see any other cool videos, check the links down below, as well as the channel. I really appreciate your guys' help, and I'm glad you enjoy these videos as much as I enjoy making them for all the denizens of the Dark City. After all, Skari out. It's an exclusive. We're playing the game.